Hey y'all, David here. Grateful to have you on this free introduction to quantum alignment. So today I'm going to be dropping a little bit into a few key principles of what allows you to really step into quantum alignment and what that is. And so the first principle I'm going to be talking about today is what is known as the mirror principle. And the mirror principle is the awareness that life reflects what we project into the mirror. And the more that we can see all of life as a mirror, it allows us to actually turn all of the reflections and all of the either conscious or unconscious projections into an opportunity to shift our relationship to life from being the victim of our circumstances and the outcomes in our life to actually the alchemist, turning everything into a psychic substance, turning everything into an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to actually have the mirror be a clear reflection of what it is we truly seek and long for in our heart. So what is truly in alignment with our soul, if you will. And so one really good principle within the mirror principle could be looked at as intention or fate. And so some people say, well, everything is just fate or everything is just circumstances, and these things could be looked at as inner and outer intention. And the inner intention would be looked at as our petty intention or our egoic intention, and the outer intention would be looked at as faith. So fate versus faith. But the truth is why can't it be both? In life, I feel like everything is yes and yes fate and faith. And so if you notice, this smaller circle is within the larger circle. And what that shows us is that our prayer, our intention for our life is encompassed within the circumference of outer intention or larger intention or faith. The trip happens is we have to actually surrender the inner intention to outer intention for it to become greater. And that happens through allowing. It happens through trust, and it happens through faith. But it is yes and. We can have a prayer, we can have an intention for life, and to the degree that we give it up is to the degree that it comes into our life at an easeful, organic rate. And so that could be looked at as when we hold on to something, we try to possess it. We are trying to grasp, and that's through the orientation of free will. But free will is really the freedom to surrender, to give it up. And so to the degree that we hold on to it is to the degree that we give it importance. We put it on a pedestal. And we've just put it on a pedestal, we've put that thing in front of love, in front of life, in front of God. And when we do that, we create excess potential. We create resistance to the very thing that it is we are trying to call in. And the truth is as we surrender this inner intention, this petty intention, to outer intention, greater expansion, the resistance is alleviated because the balancing forces have become even. And so this happens through the awareness that things are in a constant state of becoming, or more so even unbecoming. The awareness in the law of becoming is actually more so the awareness of what we are unbecoming. We are unbecoming all that someone else told us to be to create more space for being, which is when we are being, all that we're really left with is truth. And truth, from alignment and authenticity, allows things to be exactly as they are. And so through the awareness of the law of becoming, it allows things to actually organically unfold. And it doesn't mean we don't take action. It doesn't mean we don't move forward in our life. But if we're constantly holding on to the way we believe things should be as opposed to the way that things are, it creates resistance. And so a beautiful perspective in this is instead of do, have, be, if I do this in a very specific way, exactly how my mind feels it should be, then I will have the, the financial abundance, the relationship, the health, the peace or whatever, the car or the offering to humanity, and then I can be this version of myself that's at peace. But the truth is that you flip it on its head. Be, do, have. By being in a state of becoming who you are perpetually, you can do, taking action. You can do the things that you came here to do. In order to have what you want, you must become the version of yourself that you were meant to be. And as a byproduct, you have the things that you desire, but not as an outcome. And so when we get caught in the outcome, when we become outcome oriented in life, we've just put that thing back on a pedestal. Gives it excess importance, creates resistance, and so on and so forth. So life needs to balance it, and it teaches us these lessons really through our own resistance until we get to a point of surrender. But when we can drop that, when we can drop the importance, when we can be the version of ourselves, the authentic version of ourselves, the aligned version of ourselves, then we can move through a place of alignment and do the things that we came here to do. And as a byproduct, we have the things that are meant for us. Because the beautiful perspective in this too is what is meant for you cannot miss. And that's very reassuring if you think about it. What is truly meant for you will be and cannot miss. It's like a sigh of relief. You simply just move through that. And so that happens through the law of becoming. The mirror principle and the law of becoming go hand in hand. The mirror principle is the awareness that life is reflecting what you project into it, and the law of becoming is that constant perpetual state in the awareness that things are becoming based off who you are being, or the version of you that you are identifying with. And this happens through the awareness that all of reality, all potential selves exist simultaneously. So it's not about creating the ideal version of yourself. It's about aligning to the version of yourself that is already living and doing and being those things that make you feel most authentic. And the fruits of your labor will show you which direction is most authentic. And so you can it's almost like you're trying these identities on for size. And as you try them on, you will become more and more aware of which ones feel most authentic to you. And this is where emotions come into play. Emotions are like the barometers, the echolocators of this spectrum of hue, man, right? Hue is a spectrum of light. Man, human, we have a full spectrum. So from the awareness and the echolocator of emotions, we understand that all emotions are welcome. So it's not about rejecting or neglecting a certain emotion or a certain aspect of yourself or resisting who you are right now. The resistance actually creates excess potential too. So what it really is, it's about fully accepting the full spectrum of the hue man that you are and becoming right now. And it could be put as simply as making a new choice. When we make a different choice, we quantumly shift to a different timeline or a different identity. But it only comes through fully feeling, accepting, and allowing and taking radical responsibility for all of the actions and choices that have led up to this point in time right now. And so when we can fully feel whatever's coming up and the emotional spectrum of the human experience, that is what brings us into this present moment, the eternal now, collapses future past, and allows us to make a new choice. And so with the awareness of the law of becoming and the mirror principle, these things help us echolocate through our psycho-emotional awareness to the now, the eternal now. And also there is the awareness of knowing what it is we do desire through our emotional states. And so the fruits of our labor will be, you will know what is truly in alignment with your soul and yourself through the emotions. So when you try these identities on for size, it's the emotions. You will feel more peace, more joy, more happiness, more clarity, more expansion in the authentic alignment. And with that awareness, you have these tools in your toolbox, the echolocators of emotion. Energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion allows us to really feel and see and know what is true. And so the first portion is knowing what it is that feels authentic to you and knowing what it is you do want through the mirror principle and the law of becoming. Another principle, and a bigger part, or just as great, is knowing what it is that doesn't feel in alignment for you. And that happens through the awareness of what could be called pendulums. And pendulums have been given many different names, some of which could be called watikas, mind viruses and conglomerations, egregores, psychic parasites, but the truth is that there is also a light aspect within the pendulums as well. So pendulums are neither inherently good nor bad, they are simply forces of nature that allow things to spiral in and out, implicate, explicate, expansion, contraction, electromagnetic. So the pendulums could be looked at as any thoughts, beliefs, ideas, or group thinks that feed off psycho-emotional energy, psychic emotional energy, or attention. So our attention is the most powerful thing we have. My ability to consider you clearly, clear, distilled, aligned mirror. My attention is the most powerful thing that I have. And with this awareness, we get to look at anything outside of ourselves. So a pendulum could be looked at as simply as anything outside of your soul, your heart, or your authentic self that is siphoning or pooling your psycho-emotional attention. And so it gains its momentum, right? A pendulum swings. It gains its momentum through your emotional attention. And so becoming aware of anything outside of yourself that is siphoning or pooling your attention. And some ways to identify this is when you have something that doesn't allow space for critical thinking, for curiosity, for questioning, for free thought, for free ideas, for free emotional expression. That is a pendulum. Some good examples, politics to organized religion, sports, teams, organizations. And like I said, none of these things are good nor bad. They simply just are. But to the degree that it's pulling your emotional attention and not allowing you to be you, that's your identifier. And so some ways that you could recalibrate, quantumly align to authenticity is you become aware. You become aware that this thing is cycling or siphoning your psychic emotional attention. You emotionally detach. You realign to that which is true. Those echolocators of emotion will bring it back to you, to now, to the degree that you can become aware of these cycling energies. Raising the energy, doing things that are increasing free energy and physiological energy, and then realigning continually. Who am I? Where am I? And what am I doing? And when we can really, really tap into these awarenesses, these processes of who I am, who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And what's the most easeful path? With the awareness of alignment, it really allows these things to just be as they are. And the trip of it all is that actually, as you start to realign, it has no choice. These forces have no choice, since they are forces of nature that build momentum, to actually kneel, to become part of the adherence, to actually aid in the propulsion of your authenticity. And so I get a lot more into that into the modules, but there's really powerful awareness in simply making a new choice, the redirection of energy. So we have the mirror principle, the law of becoming, the awareness of pendulums, and the fourth principle is the intentions and visualization. So visualization is actually super powerful. The capacity and the ability to see things clearly, to visualize, ties back into the inner and outer intention. But it ties into the propulsion and the awareness of the becoming and the being. And so within visualization, there's two different aspects within the process. There is the process itself and the outcome. And like I was saying earlier, if we get too caught up in the outcome and not the process, the outcome becomes too important and we actually create resistance around that outcome. And because it's always yes and, if we can create an awareness around where it is we are headed with the detachment or the unattachment from the outcome, we get involved in the process. So it's almost like create or experiment like a scientist and move through the process like a child at play. Move through the process like an artist. So experiment like a scientist, formulate like a scientist in the outcome, get very process oriented, and then move through it like a child at play, wonder filled in the process, in the unknown of it all. So the outcome visualization could be looked at very similarly to the inner intention, the prayer. Get clear on what it is the outcome, but then you have to let it go, surrender it to life, and drop the importance, to bring it back into the heart, to bring it back into the childlike, wonder-filled unknown. of the play or the artist archetype. And so with that awareness of these variables, it's about 15 to 20% process-oriented visual or outcome-oriented visualization. It's about 15 to 20% outcome-oriented visualization, visualizing the outcome, and about 80 to 85% process visualization. And these come into echolocation and orientation within the cycle of the sun, within the day. And so I love the idea of bookends, having bookends of our day, morning and evening, having these routines, these rituals. And within the morning and the evening, especially the evening, creating space for the outcome visualization. And then throughout the day, we have these mindfulness or awareness or visualization snacks, little snacks, approachable for the process, while we're actually embodying and living out the process. And so with this awareness, having bookends of outcome or object-oriented visualization, and then throughout the day, incremental snacks of process visualization and process actualization, taking actions. It allows us to really embody that state of becoming and really take radical responsibility and have accountability and awareness of the mirrors, the mirror principle at work. In the awareness of when our energy is being pulled out, siphoned out towards something which is not authentic, being the pendulum, and then implementing those principles into the visualization practices of the process and the outcome, and the surrender of the outcome into the process. That's when we can really collapse those. And so with these awarenesses, it also ties into the organic nature of it. The not forcing. We're not forcing anything. We are taking actions. So alignment could be put as simply as, to the degree that our thoughts, words, and deeds are in alignment with our mind, body, and our spirit, that is what the trinity of alignment is. With these principles, but also allowing and becoming aware of noticing, when are you forcing things? When are you forcing as opposed to allowing? Because when we are in a state of allowance, things just happen. When we're in a state of forcing or willing onto our reality, we are in a state of importance. We've given something too much importance. So when we can allow things to unfold organically, but also implementing systems for our mind to drop into the heart, it creates a beautiful synergy of this fate to faith ratio. Fate to faith. Allowing, becoming, noticing the mirror, dropping the importance, becoming aware of the pendulums, and allowing the visualization to be a play. Allowing life to be at play. So I feel like this is a great introduction to quantum alignment. I know that these principles and these action items have had a huge, huge impact in my life. And so I'm so grateful to be able to share these with you. And I trust that everything happens in what could be called divine timing. So allowing yourself to even go back and watch this video again and again and again, as many times. I even challenge you to replay this video 30, 60, 90 days. Implement these systems, these principles, these mastery principles into your life and see how that impacts your day-to-day experience. And if you feel called to it, join the Quantum Alignment Mastery. Join the course and see where it takes you. Okay, I hope you have a beautiful day.